is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this big old world of ours, this shared experience we call life. We've got this podcast here. It's called Screen Watching. We do this controversial idea, which is that we watch movies, we watch TV shows, we come here on a podcast, we talk about them. Oh, I know, just let's hold back on that one. It's a lot. But anyway, if you can process that, here's some other stuff to process. We're going to talk about the inevitable smash hit drama. It's coming from Prime Video. It's called Red One. It's going to play in cinemas. It's going to stream on your thing. It's got The Rock. It's got Santa Claus. I think Santa Claus and The Rock are the same person. I don't know, but Simon's going to tell us all about it. And also, I don't know whether he did this, but I reckon there's probably more than one mention of Prime delivery services through this film. So let's let Simon delve deep into that. And meanwhile, I'm going to take a look back to the past with two shows of the present. There's your granddad's favorite TV show from the 80s, Matlock. It's back. And there's your granddad's favorite book from the 70s turned into a movie from the 70s that I'm sure he also enjoyed called Day of the Jackal. We're going to talk about those. We've got some discussions of other things that we've watched. Folks, there's a lot going on, and the only way to do it is to do two things. First, introduce Simon Foster, my co-host and collaborator. Simon, are you well? Please tell me you are. I need to know that you're well.
Dan, I'm very well, actually. As we record this, it's quite early in the morning, but I am starting to rev up. I've got opinions about Red One, the new Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film. Your cynical approach to this being just an Amazon, bit of paid advertising for themselves. Well, I'll address that in the review. But yeah, lots to talk about, lots to get on with. So let's get on with.
And can I just take a very quick detour? Simon, before we started recording, suggested that my video was quote-unquote washed out. What he doesn't understand is that this is one of those sort of mid to late 90s era blue-filtered lenses that we've got happening here on the thing. So think Traffic, think that movie with Mel Gibson where he was involved in a ransom. I forget what that was called. Anyway, folks, there's very deliberate artistic choices being made here, and one of those choices is to throw straight to the reviews. Simon, do you want to tell us all about Red One?
Cool place.
Welcome to the North Pole.
Come again?
Last night, Red One, also known as St. Nicholas of Myra, was abducted.
Are you saying Santa Claus has been kidnapped?
You're the best tracker in the world. You're gonna help us find him.
I work alone. You used to. I'm not gonna like you. I can tell right away. Out of everyone here, I like you the least. Garcia?
What the hell?
Shall we do the thing? I'm afraid we're gonna have to.
You're mine until we find him.
Oh, God.
I suggest you get going.
So every year, this little thing called Christmas comes around, and as part of the Christmas tradition is the high concept.
Wait. Simon, slow down. Sorry, Chris what?
Yes, it's a little thing called Christmas. Our non-denominational podcast is dipping into the Judeo-Christian tradition of Christmas to tell the story of Red One. High-concept Christmas comedies are kind of a thing now. You know, they've always been around, but certainly with the advent of streaming, no pun intended, the high-concept Christmas comedy is an annual thing. This year, before Jack Black hits the screens with Dear Santa. Boy, have you seen the trailer for that? That looks wacky. We have Red One, which is the new film that stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the head of the North Pole Security Division. Red One is the name given to Santa. He does not play Santa, Dan Barrett. Do your research. Santa is played by one very buffed up J.K. Simmons. But very soon, Santa, Red One, is kidnapped by Kiernan Shipka, who we know from Sabrina and some other stuff along the way. She plays...
Sorry.
I'm right in the middle of the
she's
high
also
concept...
in the greatest TV show of all... Yeah, but if you're going to drop BS like, oh, she's in Sabrina, the show that barely made its way through 2.5 seasons on Netflix, or Mad Men, the greatest TV show ever made.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mad
she
Men.
was the star of Mad Men.
She wasn't the star of Mad Men. She was a tiny part in Mad
She
Men.
was. She was part of the ensemble cast, Simon.
Oh, the ensemble now, is she? She was the star of Sabrina. She's the villain in Red One. She plays the Christmas witch. No spoiler intended there, but she kidnaps Santa and wants to harness the power that he possesses by exploiting the naughty list, putting all of mankind into snow globes. Anyone who's on the naughty list is going to live in a world of snow globe terror. And it's up to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Chris Evans for some reason in a part that he's way too old for, still playing that goofy kind of guy. I can't imagine why he would take this. Oh, that's right, dollars. And Lucy Liu as the head of the security division, who spends a lot of this film yelling at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to get Santa back and stat. Pluses for this include the return of Bonnie Hunt to the big screen. I love Bonnie Hunt. She plays Mrs. Claus, or MC, as she's known in the film. The other big plus here is how the film actually looks. Well, not all the way through, because it's quite dark in parts, but they create this big, vast sort of North Pole realm, and it is really some of the most beautiful CGI and beautiful model work that I've seen in a long time. The reindeers are pretty spectacular. There's a polar bear warrior for some reason. There's a sequence set in the West Indies in which snowmen attack our heroes. I don't know what the hell's going on. I really like the opening of this film. It sets up the story really well and sets up how we've all just got to try and be better to each other if we want to engender the spirit of Christmas. And the ending is sort of a big action set piece, which is, yes, it's all very CGI cartoonish, but it's all cut together really well. This one's directed by Jake Kasdan, which is why I mentioned his name a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember if you cut that out of the podcast, but I got him confused with the Kasdan, Reitman. This is the film that he's directing and why I got confused. And he does a pretty good job of it. The middle section just buggers around too much. It gets too convoluted. But if you top and tail it, and maybe have a sleep through the middle bit like I did, then you'll probably quite enjoy Red One. It's in cinemas now before disappearing into the void that is streaming in the weeks ahead. Check it out with your family.
I don't know that any film starring The Rock on Prime Video ever disappears into the depths of streaming. I think it'll definitely be on people's screens for a little while. But yeah,
a little while. I think it's going to be very. I'm very glad I saw it on the big screen, and I saw it on a very big screen, the extreme screen format at our friends at Hoyt Cinemas. I was one of 3 people in the cinema for the 10:30 session yesterday morning, so I had a whole extreme screen to myself, which was kind of fun. But it looked good on the big screen. I just think a lot of the effects work and a lot of the intricacies of what they've done might get lost on the small screen. So, which will put the focus back on the characters and the story, and that's not a good thing. But yes, well worth having a look at. Sitting down, this is a great Christmas Day afternoon movie that you can put on, frighten the kids, have a nod off on the couch before the cricket starts, and before you know it, you're all done.
You had my interest when you said a little name called Jake Kasdan. Jake Kasdan, I've got a deep fascination with. So, one of these sort of Nepo babies we've all heard so much about in the media. His father's Lawrence Kasdan, well-respected director in his own right, screenwriter of little films like Empire Strikes Back, and did a little bit of the Indiana Jones work.
He sure did, yeah.
Directed a couple of my favorite movies here and there. He's a talented person, and his son also, certainly at the beginning of his career, showed a lot of promise. He came out in the sort of late 90s. He did a TV pilot which didn't get picked up, so they spun it off into being a film called Zero Effect, which is a excellent little
it really is.
noir drama, quite good. Orange County, which is a favorite of mine. It's a teen comedy from the very early 2000s with one Colin Hanks in it. The TV Set, which is a David Duchovny starring TV movie about a guy who's got all the best intentions in the world to translate his book into a TV pilot, and it goes completely awry as he gets corrupted by the system. And then the peak of his career was Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story in 2007. And then after that, he just falls off a cliff. I don't know what happens, but you got titles like Bad Teacher, Sex Tape, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Jumanji, The Next Level, and now Red One. Like, what has happened to Jake Kasdan? But anyway,
Moolah.
let's put all that aside, Simon, because
Yeah.
it's going to make me sad. Let's instead delve right into the world of your, as I said at the beginning, your grandfather's favorite TV drama, Matlock.
Matlock!
There's this funny thing that happens when women age. We become damn near invisible.
Oh dear. Oh, I got you.
It's useful because nobody sees us coming.
Talk to me about the Peabody case.
I got them up to 19 million.
Actually, you can get quite a bit more out of Peabody.
Who are you?
I'm Madeline Matlock. I'm a lawyer. Yes, Matlock, like the old TV show.
Lawyer working for...
You.
But Simon, wait, I'm going to talk about something else as well. It is your grandfather's favorite book and movie from the 70s. It's Day of the Jackal.
Who's the target?
My clients need to know if you think it's possible.
It'll cost.
Police all over Europe are looking for him. We are reaching out to all our international partners for assistance.
He's an exceptional assassin. He will kill again, unless we stop him.
There's no record of him anywhere. This guy's a ghost.
Simon, people may say it's unfair me bundling these two programs together, but I think it's important to do that because they are talking to the same audience, but in very different ways. And I thought it was maybe interesting to look at these as a compare and contrast.
Sure.
So, Matlock, a TV show which absolutely nobody really remembers outside of the references in The Simpsons and the very fancy white suits that Andy... Oh gosh, why have I forgotten original Matlock's name? Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith,
is
yes.
playing. Yeah. So everyone remembers the look of the show, but I don't think anyone actually remembers the show, even though like it ran for a bunch of years. And as I said, certainly became that punchline in The Simpsons for way too many years. Wikipedia tells me there are 193 episodes plus the pilot
Lord.
movie run across 9 seasons. That's a lot of Matlock.
That's a lot of Matlock.
Yeah. But it's back. Now, considering that this show is a bit of a punchline of a show, okay, like it takes a lot of justification to bring it to the screen. And this show kind of does it in a really interesting way. So the revised version of it, which is developed by Jeannie Snyder Ehrman, a person I'm not that familiar with, to be completely honest, she's got Kathy Bates in the titular Matlock role.
That's good.
And the gimmick of this one is that Matlock, the TV show, exists in the world of this TV program. You've got this retired lawyer named Madeline Kingston. Okay, she's come back to work, and there's different levels of this, but we'll talk about this as the show plays it straight at the beginning. She's wants to come back to work. She's been out of the workforce for a couple of decades at this point. She's coming back to this law firm, and she's there as a junior associate. She just wants to work her way back in and prove her worth, and eventually start making some money again. She's coming at this saying, hey, look, the one thing that you'll find that I bring to the workplace as a woman who's much later in life is nobody sees me coming. Okay, so she established that right at the beginning, and you see there's multiple times through this where people just kind of, play along nicely with the older lady who's asking them questions. She's handing out barley sugars to people. Like, it's all the standard sort of, shtick that you expect. And of course, because it's a TV show, she's incredibly good. She always manages to cut through a case in like 2.5 weeks, where they've been working this case for 9 months prior. It's that kind of program. This is a very generic CBS procedural with this gimmick that this woman, Madeline Kingston, who goes by the name of Maddie, okay, and I've kind of given away this a little bit, she's presented to herself, everyone in the office, as being Maddie Matlock, not Madeline Kingston, okay? And so this is part of this shtick. She's got this, and it's a plot twist at the end of the first episode, but the first few episodes are already available, and I kind of figure if you haven't watched it by now, maybe this twist is the thing that's going to get you into this. The end of the first episode ends with this twist where you find out that she isn't actually Maddie Matlock as she's been presenting herself, but she is Madeline Kingston, a wealthy lawyer who's actually trying to get herself into this law firm to bring it down because they represented the drug company that sold opioids that ended up killing her daughter.
Quick
so she's
point.
got this vested interest.
Quick point.
Okay, let me just quickly finish the thing.
Okay.
Okay, she's got this vested interest to bring down this law firm, and that's kind of interesting. But at the very beginning, they set it up with this thing where one of the many sort of tools in her arsenal is to say, hey, look, my name's the same thing as this character from this TV show back in the day.
Oh
and
my
so that's
God.
the only justification for this being Matlock. Okay, it's basically a bit of diversion that she's got saying, hey, look, I'm Matlock, and isn't that cute? And all the young people are like, I don't know what that TV show is. Okay, and that's kind of the gimmick of this program.
If she's a senior...
Sorry, Simon, before you do that, I'm just going to wrap up the overall thought, and then we'll delve into your big question here. So this program hinges on this idea that it's a nostalgic name, it's a show within a show, and it's overloaded. Like, after this first episode, there is no value at all to her keeping up this shtick of being Matlock, and I don't know why they just didn't call her Maddie Matlock and just roll with that as the thing. Like, I just don't get it. Sorry, Simon.
If she is a successful lawyer of a certain age with a reputation that's got her to this
Yes.
point, how does a major law firm not know who she is in the world of law? How do they not recognize her?
So, you bring up two very interesting points here. Okay. Now, the first one is, and it's kind of justifiable, which is that she's been out of practice now for quite a few years. Like, the impression I got was that it's, probably since the 80s that she's practiced law.
Okay,
And she's dealing with a whole lot of younger lawyers, and so it's understandable in the way that generational change happens that they don't know her. There's always the danger of them coming across a reference to her, because I don't know if you know much about the law, Simon, but a lot of it revolves around precedents and people looking up cases of previous lawsuits and legal, maneuverings. Yeah, so there's always a strong chance, but also she'd only be a name in there. So Madeline Kingston, like, that probably wouldn't really necessarily trigger too many bells. So that's kind of okay. But the head of this law firm, is played by Beau Bridges, of whom is a lawyer who's certainly old enough to have been operating in the same city where she also lives. Like, there's a strong chance that they would be known to each other if they're both working at the sort of level that they're at. So,
let's grant it some license. Let's just go with it and say, all right, for the benefits of the TV show, we'll just let that one slide.
Anyway, as I said, the show's a little bit overloaded with this whole Matlock sort of pretense name. Like, I like the idea of this lawyer who's come back to try to bring down the law firm. I think that's kind of a fun gimmick.
Sure.
I like that overall Kathy Bates sort of idea of
Kathy Bates is a good get. She's a good get for a network series. That's a lot of quality there.
Yeah, and she's the person to watch it. And also in the cast, in the same way that you confuse your Jake Kasdans and your Jake Kasdans and your Jason Reitmans. The real confusion is, in my mind, Jason Reitman versus co-star in this series, Jason Ritter, of whom's the son of Papa Ritter.
John the man. Yes.
Johnny Ritter.
Who's done some good work, Jason, over the years. He's made a name for himself in different things.
You know what? He's certainly done work, but I can't say that I've ever watched something going, you know what? I really got a lot out of that Jason Ritter performance. He's kind of little... Like, he's not even bad on screen.
No.
But there's just there's a bit of a non-presence about him, which is a bit unfortunate, because he was on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron a couple of weeks ago, and he seemed like a very charming, nice guy. I was actually really taken with the interview. Like, I like him, but I've just never watched him in anything going, oh gosh, Jason Ritter, what a talent.
Remember that time Jason Ritter did ... You can't answer that. That's not a question.
Exactly.
You can answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like how I've never heard anyone use the phrase, remember that time Dan Barrett did ... Like, it's the same. Okay, but I did promise that we were going to sort of smush together the two grandpa TV programs, being this and Day of the Jackal. I want us to do that deliberately, because these are two shows which try embracing IP that is decades old at this point, and they both approach from different ways. Matlock tries to update it by having it as a show within a show and doing something entirely different with the Matlock experience. Like, they're still legal case of the week stories, but it is coming from things with a maybe more of a sort of culturally, socially interested perspective in talking about the role of older people within workplaces, and there's something interesting there. Day of the Jackal plays it completely straight, and at no point are you ever thinking, oh, they've really updated this for the modern era. And look, they've certainly updated it. It certainly doesn't feel like 1973 when you're watching this, but it does feel like it's a... I said it was a show for your grandparents. It feels like if you're a 75-year-old man and you're creating a modern-day spy drama, this is the show that you'd probably come up with.
Isn't that Slow Horses? Aren't we doing that with
Slow
Slow Horses?
Okay, well, Slow Horses is maybe a little bit more interesting in that they try playing around with the tropes, the conventions, the style of the very traditional British spy drama, but
Right.
they layer in a sense of humor to it, and it's got a very different perspective on the world.
Now, were you familiar with the Day of the Jackal?
Slow Horses is great because it comes at it from an everyman sort of downtrodden perspective.
Right.
Whereas most of these come at it from a, even if it is, if you think about like the standard sort of hitman, okay, like, that kind of solitary people, and they don't necessarily exist in a strata in the same way they see sort of in spy drama or Slow Horses.
Yep.
But also these are usually very well paid people who are performing hits and, living some fairly decadent lifestyles away from being a hit person.
Which was done very recently
which was
done most recently with Michael Fassbender in The Killer. Now, I'm quite familiar with
Simon,
the
you
Day
say
of the
The
Jackal.
Killer, but also you say The Killer, but also every other hitman drama that we've seen on TV and movies over the last 40 years.
That's who they are, yeah.
That's the thing with this. What you're watching is exactly what you expect from the outset. You've got a hitman drama set across Europe, which means you've got lots of really cool background visuals. You've got series star Eddie Redmayne getting around in some really cool looking coats and fancy turtlenecks and just looking every bit the European adventurer / hitman that you kind of really want from something like this.
It's a very durable story, though, isn't it? Like, because it worked in the 70s, it worked as a great book, and the book was just part of every 70s bookshelf. I remember my parents had it and read it, and we watched the movie, and I think we even watched that terrible Bruce Willis version that introduced the world to Jack Black at some point. So, look, it is a durable story that can be updated with. So,
okay, well, can I just contest that a little bit?
Yeah,
I think watching this, and this is certainly. When you sit down and watch this, you're expecting a lavish production with some pretty good actors in here and, just great backgrounds. And it lives up to what you expect from it.
Good.
But at the same time, I'm watching the first episode of this one and it just kind of feels, I think creaky is probably the wrong word, but it feels like we're maybe reaching the end of the shelf life for this. So it's only been durable for, like near 50 years now. Okay. But I just kind of felt with this one, as I said at the beginning, it kind of felt like the sort of spy drama a 75-year-old's writing, and it's not a 75-year-old writing this at all as a younger person, but it definitely just kind of feels like it's still holding on to a lot of the tropes from this sort of genre we've seen over the last, 30 to 50 years. So there's one sequence where Eddie Redmayne's Jackal character goes to an internet cafe in 2024, Simon. He goes to an internet cafe and he gets on this thing called the dark web where he's taking his things. Like, surely, look, I'm not a hitman. I don't necessarily play around in those circles that much. That may surprise you. But I would assume that these days, a lot of hit people aren't necessarily taking their jobs through the dark web as much as they are through apps like Signal would be probably the assumption. So, it just kind of felt like it was not quite of this era, even though it kind of is. But look, it's certainly entertaining. If you've got very fond memories of Day of the Jackal from back in the day, I think you'll probably be very happy with this. And certainly I'm going to watch this through to the end because it's pleasurable, but also you're kind of watching this going like, why am I watching this? Because
for fans of the original,
done that before.
We all want to ask the question, does he shoot a pumpkin? Because in the original one, Edward Fox lines up over like many miles away through his telescopic lens, if I recall correctly, a pumpkin, and he blows the crap out of it. Like, fires this, which in the remake with Bruce Willis, I think that pumpkin was played by Jack Black, if I remember the scene. That Jack Black sells him the armaments, and then Bruce Willis makes him run so that he can shoot him with the said armaments, which seems like a flaw in Jack Black's selling technique to actually hand over a loaded gun to an assassin. But is there an equivalent scene in this thing where they destroy some large vegetable and or fruit?
Look, I'm not going to address this for one very big reason, which is that Halloween was about a week and a half ago. Okay, but I've got a 3-year-old in the household who has been obsessing over Halloween for the week and a half since and won't stop talking about it.
Sorry,
and I just don't want to hear any talk about pumpkins, frankly.
Being blown up. Yeah, no, totally understand. Gotcha. My bad.
Look, I don't remember a pumpkin scene. But look, I do remember lots of fancy turtlenecks, and ultimately that's kind of what you want from this. So,
sure.
Look, Matlock, I think Matlock has its pleasures. I think it's something which people come back to week after week. I think that the premise of it is stretched a little bit beyond being particularly that interesting after the first episode. Meanwhile, Day of the Jackal, it's a pretty tight, limited series. I think people, if you know the title Day of the Jackal, you know exactly what this program is, and it gives you exactly what you're after, and sometimes that's perfectly fine.
Dan Barrett, this leads us to a very important question in the wake of your reviews. What else have you been watching? More precisely, what else have I been watching? Because we've heard you talk for quite some time now, and as entertaining as that is, maybe we just need a little... Maybe we just need a little breath of fresh air. And I've only got a little bit of fresh air. I don't know whether people have noticed, but there is nothing in cinemas this week. I raced out and saw Red One yesterday morning because I had nothing else to review. Two films that I've had a look... The one thing have watched on one of the streaming platforms is a terrific documentary called Music by John Williams. We all know and love the movie music of the great John Williams. I didn't realize that his career went as far back as sort of the late 50s, early 60s, and he was a jazz musician who did incidental piano music on some of the big hits of the day. So it's more than just Jaws or Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Some of the great soundtracks of our generation, arguably the greatest of all time. And this documentary speaks to a whole lot of really interesting movie people, as well as John Williams, who's now in his 90s and still as sharp as ever, going through some of the great soundtracks and how they were formed and the people he formed them with. There is a very odd moment where they interview Chris Martin from Coldplay. Chris is in the country at the moment. I know he's listening, so hi, Chris. And apparently, Chris Martin and Coldplay enter the concert arena to the strains of the soundtrack from E.T., which is Chris Martin's favourite bit of music. That seems very odd to me. And I know a couple of people who went to the Coldplay concert during the week. I mean, you went twice, which I was surprised to hear. So so this is on Disney Plus, and you can check this out and see some great insight to the creative process that is John Williams. And you may also wonder what the hell Chris Martin's doing in this documentary. The other thing that I've been watching is I've caught up with a little sort of quiz show thing called The Floor, which in a week when I didn't have a whole lot to watch, this sort of became dinner time viewing. It features Rob Lowe as the host of a series in which people are showing the film equivalent or the LED screen equivalent of flashcards, and you've got to name what they are based on the category. And you eliminate other players from this giant floor, which is broken down into squares, and each of those squares represents a category. So you might get US presidents versus foods of the southern states or something like that. And they get up, and then on the screen, they'll flash up Abraham Lincoln, gumbo. And it's the strangest concept, but somehow very compelling to watch. And the last person left standing wins $250,000. So, yeah, so that was The Floor. That's what we watched this week. Over to you, Dan.
I thought we had a policy in this podcast of not talking about things that you can't actually get here in Australia properly, Simon, but that's neither here nor there.
I know.
Because I feel the need to bring some sort of Australian element to it. Obviously, Simon's only talking about this because he's excited about the Australian version of it coming in 2025, hosted by Roger Corser.
Really? I did not know that. That is fascinating. Roger Corser, Australia's
Simon,
Rob Lowe.
Of course you knew that. That's why you were talking about it.
That's why I was talking about it. Dan Barrett, which brings me back to my original question. What else have you been watching?
Nothing. I've been hiding under a quilt for about 2 or 3 days now, and I'm going straight back to that as soon as we finish.
Okay, good. That's quality podcasting right there.
Look, I'm just honest. It's about authenticity, Simon.
Yeah,
that's
authenticity.
Important in the podcast.
All right. So that's literally bringing us to the end of this podcast. What has Murph been watching the last few days? Has she got a new show that's worth mentioning?
No, it's just Bluey on end. It's just episodes and episodes and episodes of Bluey. Occasionally she'll watch some Sego Mini Friends. Occasionally she'll watch a bit of Peter Rabbit's pretty popular.
Nice.
It's all fine. Folks, if you've enjoyed this podcast and, frankly, there's question marks around that, you might want to follow us into our various other endeavors. Obviously, Simon and I have our Smash Hit podcast. What's the name of the podcast again, Simon?
Best movie year, 1987 promo.
That's it. Yeah. Look, and basically each week we look at the films of 1987. So, Simon, films we've discussed so far include...
With Niall and I, The Kindred, The Stepfather. Very soon you'll hear our version, our take on Outrageous Fortune, and we're about to record a young filmmaker named Woody Allen's film Radio Days. That should be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see how we handle that.
I've got lots of ideas and talking points. But anyway, folks, you can find us doing that. That's on all of your various podcast feeds. Also, if you want to follow me on my own solo journeys, there's my OnlyFans. But then also you can check me out at alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter that comes out every day of the week. It's sort of the news stories and TV and streaming and movies and all sorts of gear. You can find that at alwaysbewatching.com. Comes out 5 days a week. Simon, what's going on in your world?
I am tuning into your OnlyFans page regularly, which I thought was called Only Dan's, but that's just neither here nor there. Screen Watching, you can find us on Facebook at Screen Watching Podcast, on Threads or YouTube. Threads, is that still a thing? At Screen Watching, and email screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com. And I've suddenly found myself, to avoid doing any real work, writing a whole lot more for screen-space.net. So there's some new stuff over there to entertain and enlighten you.
Excellent. That's what the world needs, enlightenment. Folks, this has been the Screen Watching Podcast. We'll be back next week. We'll catch you then.